happening? Where am I at? Where am I at? Where? Oh my goodness. Why is it so complicated to do? I have no idea why. Which is good. I'm glad that don't have anybody here except for manga figure photos. Thank you for being here. So you got to see the mess up at the beginning, but you know the difficulties of StreamYard sometimes. So, oh, and how's Hendo? Hey, Hendo, thank you guys for taking your time to listen to an old man prattle on about some movie soundtracks tonight. That's the topic tonight, and this is actually I thought this was going to be a very easy one to do because I'm only focusing on soundtracks that I like that I listen to. I'll every once in a while, even though I don't have any CDs anymore, which is where I used to have all these on. But every once in a while, I'll go through YouTube and I'll think, oh, I haven't heard this song from this movie in a while, so I'll pull it up and listen to it. Or sometimes you can hit just say type in the soundtrack, it'll give you the track listing, it'll take you through the videos on that. But before I start, as always, want to announce that still no sponsor, which I don't ever think that's ever going to happen, though. But we're doing good. It's the summers. It's hot everywhere. Here in Florida, it's hot. It's running up the electric bill, the electricity, and all that. So I'm looking forward to that ending. So with that, let's talk about the topic tonight. I'll go ahead and bring this up. And I think I have these all set up the way I think they're going to be. Now these are, like I said, these are my these are some of my favorite. And this is hard to do because every time I would think of a soundtrack, I didn't want to do a comprehensive list because I'm only trying to keep it to an hour tonight. And every time I had like a huge list of soundtracks. I kept going, oh, I picked this one. I should talk about this one, but this one's good too. And it just became. And then as soon as I thought I was done with it and had everything set up, then I would think, oh, what about this one? So it was crazy. So these are basically what I did is I narrowed this down to 10 soundtracks. And they're in no particular order of relevance or preference. And again, these are mine. Some of you may have seen these movies. You go, the movie sucked, or you didn't like the soundtrack. But these are things that I really liked both the movies and the soundtracks for. And by no means is this a comprehensive list of, excuse me, of soundtracks. So let's go ahead and let me get started. Dad, gosh, I'm having trouble speaking. So let's look at the first one. So the first one I brought up is So I Married an Axe Murderer. This was a 1993 film starring a pre-Austin Powers Mike Myers. I'm a fan of the Saturday Night Live era with Carvey, Hartman, Myers, those folks. And so when Mike Myers left Saturday Night Live, it's kind of a shock because we didn't have the internet back then, so these things weren't So, but then I heard he was making a movie, and this is one that was called "So Married an Axe Murderer." So it started out him and Nancy Travis, which was always one of my favorite actresses. But as I'm watching this movie, the soundtrack, I really like the soundtrack. So right after the movie, I went out and I bought the soundtrack, and this was again 1993, I believe this came out, and it is a really a good snapshot of what music was like outside of grunge at the time, because that was the style of music that was dominating everything. So you had like bands like the Boo Radleys. Remember they did that song "There She Goes," which was actually they didn't popularize that song. The song came out, and then I think about a year or two later, I believe it was Sixpence that did their version of "There She Goes," and that's the one that kind of like dominated the MTV airwaves of that time. But you had Toad the Wet Sprocket doing that, Soul Asylum, which that was kind of like about the only like kind of grungy band that's on that soundtrack. Then Big Audio Dynamite, which is oh gosh, who was that guy? He was one of the guys from the Clash. I think it was I can't. I'm blanking on his name. It might have been Strummer. I can't remember. But yeah, that was his little band at the end of it. So they kind of like a little poppy tune there. And then the song that has a great video on this one is Ned's Atomic Dustbin, their cover of the Bay City Rollers' Saturday Night. I highly recommend if you want to like Google that one and watch it. And it was just a good one. And then plus too, in the movie, Mike Myers does he's a poet, and I don't know how he was making money doing that because it seemed to be like his only job in the movie in the San Francisco poetry scene back then. And so he does a couple of poems, and they're included in on the soundtrack, which was pretty cool, pretty funny if you watch that. So the next one I chose was the Nightmare Before Christmas. Now I'm going to tell you this selection is 90s heavy. A lot of that is because in the 90s I was in the Marine Corps, and you in the military you kind of wind up having a lot of time on your hands. And plus I was single, so my money was mine. So I got to go and see a lot of movies in the theater. Back before it cost several $1,000s to go see a movie nowadays. So I got to see a lot of movies in the theater. So when this came out, and this was Tim Burton's famous puppet movie. I think all the baby goths is what I call them. These are the ones that have the Sally and the Jack Skellington, you know, tattoos, and but this is kind of like right at the beginning of the goth scene. This movie kind of hit, and it was Tim Burton's. Danny Elfman produced it, wrote a lot of the songs, performed some of the songs in it, and it's one of those things because the movie was a musical, so these songs are integral to the story of it. But it's just a lot of pop, catchy songs that kind of stick in your head. This and every year around Halloween, I start singing, "This is Halloween." But it was good. But what I liked about this one is I picked this soundtrack up when I was in Japan. And the difference is that in the movie, I believe, I can't remember who did the narration, but on the soundtrack, um, Patrick Stewart did the Star Trek thing. He did the narration parts on it, in the intro and the beginning of that. So that was just a really good movie. And also the funny thing about was a movie that when Tim Burton used to work at Disney, he pitched this idea to them, and they passed on it because they said it was way too much. Nobody was doing stop motion uh, animation like this anymore. That they would never do it. And then he goes off and becomes Tim Burton, the big time director, Batman, all those movies. And then Disney came back to say, "Hey, you got any projects?" And this is the project he pitched them, and they're like, "Oh, brilliant, brilliant, love it." But yet, yeah, the '80s were a great soundtrack music era, and a lot of that is Winford, is that I feel that uh, the soundtrack was almost as important as the movie back then. And what you'll see a lot of in the '80s. The thing was for movie soundtracks is uh, for them to have one band or one artist do the entire soundtrack for it. That's where you get like Queen doing all of the Highlander soundtrack, and Toto doing like the Dune score and all this. So it was like a big deal. And then in the '90s, it kind of moved into it was like there was a mix of some already produced songs, but then a lot of times artists would create songs specifically for movies. So that's what Lou. Thanks for hopping in. I appreciate that. Um, so moving on to the next one. I feel like I'm flying through these, but that's okay. If I get done early, then we can all get out of here early and enjoy our Friday evening, because then there's a lot of stuff on YouTube happening after this. So the next one is okay. This is a great soundtrack. This is the symphonic suite for the movie Akira. Akira was came out in 1998. Every anime and manga nerd knows this movie Akira. I This is another soundtrack I picked up in Japan when I was there. The first time I ever saw the movie Akira, because when it came out, it didn't have a huge theatrical release over here in the United States. I think it came into home video, but I never saw it back when it first came out. Uh, it wasn't until the shoot, what was it? Now, when in Japan, there was a video store out in town. And so what we would do is we had a membership there back when you had memberships of video stores. So we'd go out in town and rent uh, a lot of well, one, because a lot of their theatrical releases overseas contained uh, scenes that weren't in the American release, that got cut for one reason or another. They put them in as part of the theatrical. So we saw a lot of movies uh, that had a lot of different scenes put in there. But then also too, you could get anime on home video. So I got to see like Bio Boosted Armor Guyver before it came over here. A lot of stuff. And so one of the things we rented was Akira. So the first time I watched it, first of all, the visuals of it. Yeah, so the visuals of it was just amazing. It blew me away. The detail in the artwork, and then it was the soundtrack of this movie. Because set in kind of in a at that time the future of I think the early 2000s or something like that. Um, so the soundtrack kind of felt futuristic and almost like that some of this was stuff was synthesized. But then, so I was out in town one day and I came across this, and this is something I've lost on time. By the way, all these images I pulled off the internet, so I don't own any of them. So that's that. So I found this, and then I come to find out that the this was not synthesized music. This was actually done by an orchestra, and it was. But the reason why it sounded so futuristic is they pulled in a lot of ancient types of Asian music styles. Like there's like Malaysian style music that they do. So it was just beautiful. So this is like no songs in it, nowhere. I mean, no like singing songs, but it was just an absolute amazing soundtrack. And I tell you, you put in that the one where it's the Kaneda Kaneda fighting the clowns. That whole score for that scene that's in there. Now that'll pump you up. Yeah, Kieran Wade were the Pillars of Cyberpunk. Yeah, this was kind of like the whole start of it, and I think like Kira kind of like brought that to America. So it was actually shortly after that we found the subtitled version of it. So the first time I watched it, it was completely in Japanese, no context whatsoever, and then I saw it with subtitles, and then the next time I saw it, it was dubbed, and so that's why I learned that sometimes what's in the subtitles and the dub versions can kind of be different with that. So like I said, this is just a great movie, a great soundtrack. So my next one is The Crow. Let me tell you, for those, I'm sure pretty much my entire audience probably knows about this movie. So this was, The Crow soundtrack. And this is the example of where soundtracks had a small mix of songs that had already been produced, but then songs that were original to this movie. And this was kind of the Crow. James O'Barr's The Crow was a graphic novel that was kind of taken over, especially in the for those kids that like to dress all in black and stuff like that. It was already a big hit, and then it was going to be adapted into a movie. Brandon Lee, who he was going to be the star of it, and Brandon Lee is Bruce Lee's son. And then of course we had heard, and again this is still pre-internet, but it was on the news. This was like something that made the news, that he was killed during the production of it. Somebody had loaded a thing with dummy bullets for a shot, and they took it out, and one of them was still stuck in there. So when they put the blanks in to do the scene as Eric Gray when he is shot, it actually shot him, and so they filmed it. And so, but this was a lot of industrial music because the entire tone of the movie was that dark and gritty feel. But this had some great songs on it. First of all, The Cure. They did a song specifically for the movie Burn. I mean, the song is about the events of this movie, and it was kind of neat for the Cure to do that because like the Cure was one of those bands that a lot of people they just look at them and assume they're just like dark and heavy when you look at them. But they're actually, their lyrics can be a little depressing and dark, but they're usually wrap them in kind of like a really catchy poppy style tune. But this one is just like a straight, it's a good one. And then the Stone Temple Pilots, who was a very big group at that time with that. And of course, you can't have a soundtrack that's industrial without a Nine Inch Nails song in there. And then you had the Rage Against the Machine doing that, and the Rollins Band Ghost Rider song. Oh, that's a great song. And of course, there was the second movie. I didn't include that in here that came out, but the soundtrack for the second movie was really good, and it's one of those cases where the soundtrack was actually better than the movie itself. So a lot of great songs on that. But this is a good one, but this is another. It's a great movie, and the soundtrack is such a big part of it as it goes through there. But and the one is the last track on the song, Jane Siberry. It Can't Rain All the Time. If anybody remember the movie, there's Brandon Lee's character performs a song called "It Can't Rain All the Time" for his band. I think the name of the band was Hangman's Joke, but it's something like, but yeah, I think it was his actual band that Brandon Lee had. But then on the soundtrack, Jane Siberry does a version of that song called I Can't Run, but it's just one of the most hauntingly beautiful songs on that. It's just a great song. But again, this was about, making sure that, the soundtrack and the movie matched itself, that they complemented each other. It was just a great one. So what I have next, man? I'm just plowing through these. I might be out here in a tight 30. You guys okay with that? We'll get you out here in 30 minutes. Get you back to living your lives. And by the way, this is my 7th episode of the year, and my and my 17th live stream overall, I believe. Yeah, a lot. This is a lot of women's favorite movie. And, but it is a great movie and a lot of quotable lines in it from that. And even it's one of these things too where they make changes from the source material in the movie to make it more movie, but it's really good. So what do I got next on here? So this is a movie that a lot of people probably don't know about. So this movie is called Sliver, and the movie it's not a great movie. The only reason why this movie got any attention was because it's Sharon Stone shortly after the whole Basic Instinct thing. So she was as much as she likes to complain about that movie nowadays, Basic Instinct basically kept her career going throughout the 90s. So she made a lot of money off of that scene, Basic Instinct. But it's based on a novel, and that's when people were trying to really leaning into these trying to find novels to make into movies that were like these psychological thrillers. But the whole thing was it's set in a high-rise apartment building, and Sharon said she lives in it. The guy that owns the building has everything wired with cameras in it that he can see into people's apartments. And there's a murder that happens, and she gets entangled with him. and it's like it's one of the Baldwin brothers, that's what it was. But overall, like I said, the movie isn't all that great, which is why a lot of people don't remember it nowadays. But for me, the soundtrack was really, really good. Um, and I tell you, so one of the things with me is I have a very eclectic music taste. Um, Part of that growing up is I was exposed to a lot of different types of music, from going all the way back from the 50s all the way up to what at the time was modern music, at that time. And plus, in the military, every night at the club was a different music night, genre night. So if you wanted to go to the club and hang out, and have some fun, then you needed to kind of, at least tolerate music it wasn't your taste of. Otherwise, you just don't go on this night. So from everything like, um, you know, country, heavy metal, alternative, rap, all those genres I really like. So this one was, the soundtrack. They used a lot of heavy music, but the big star of the soundtrack, and this one got a lot of airplay at the time, was the band UB40 from England, who was famous for the song "Red Wine, Red Red Wine." They're kind of like British, they kind of a heavy reggae influence, but they did a cover of Elvis Presley's "Can't Help Falling in Love," and that was like a monster hit for them. And it was done for this soundtrack right there. So that was like playing all the time. And then also too, what I like, is this was kind of where there's a performer, that goes by the name of Shaggy. In the mid '90s, he was a guy that was one of he kind of did uh, like rap in like a is there's a genre, and I can't remember the name of the genre, but it was kind of like a musical style that's coming out of Jamaica. It was a rap style that's coming out of Jamaica, even though he wasn't Jamaican. He was actually Shaggy was in the Marine Corps during Desert Storm, and wound up leaving as soon as he's done because he had a burgeoning music career coming on. And so he did that song "Oh Carolina," which was a massive hit for him with that. But then there was a few other. One was kind of like one of my favorite ones. There's a two one called a song called "Skin Flowers" on there, and this was kind of like a little bit industrial type song, but real heavy guitar in it, formed by a group called the Young Gods. And then another one called Wild at Heart, done by a group called Big God 20. But this is one that I would put the headphones on and just listen to because it was just really a lot of good songs in this one. Again, it's one of those things, like I said, where the soundtrack was far better than the movie. Like I said, I'd be hard pressed to find anybody that ever saw the movie. Um, so I was probably one of the few in there, and plus there's a scene there, sure, if you know, type of deal. So that's what I got next. Oh, so this was one of the hard ones to pick, mainly because, again, Quentin Tarantino spends almost as much time on what he kind of used to. His later films really don't go as heavy on the soundtracks as he did in the beginning. But in the beginning, soundtracks were very important to his movies. That was it was craft that way. So I had to pick between this Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction, which are both great. Pulp Fiction is a great soundtrack. But the reason I went with Reservoir Dogs, um, it's mainly because if if you've seen the movie, remember, the entire the entire movie. One of the set pieces is that there's a local radio station doing their super sounds of. So hold on, let me interrupt this. So Escaflowne. Um, I have both the DVD of the show, not the one they showed on Fox Kids, but the dub of the actual show, because there's some things that they cut out of that, and also the movie. And that was the first time I really understood this concept. When they did the movie, it wasn't connected to the show at all. It was done as if it was its own thing, and so I love both of them. But yeah, but Escaflowne is one of mine and my wife's favorite animes. It was real good. And plus, that was the first time I'd probably seen a mecha anime that was not something like a futuristic setting, but kind of like a fantasy setting. Um, it's really good. Von Fennell and Alan Shazar and all those guys. No, that's a great one, Hindo. That's a good one. So going back to Reservoir Dogs. So the entire movie is going in the background. There's the Super 70s weekend, voiced with the DJ being voiced by Stephen Wright. So it's like every song is just a great song, and it's a period song. And also too, what was great about this soundtrack is it did something you didn't see soundtracks do at the time. Is that some of the tracks were dialogue from the movie. So like the entire the Madonna speech is on there, and then the one where he's explaining us how to rob a bank. At the end, what to do if a manager gives you lip and all that stuff. And then it also had the bumpers that Stephen Wright would do, introducing songs and talking about the weekend on there. So really, as you're listening to this soundtrack, you're reliving the movie, especially the first the opening song, the Little Green Bag, when they're which is kind of the scene with them on the suits walking. Is going on, and then just the Hooked on the Feeling. Oh my gosh, what was the other one? I'm looking at a track listing right now. Stuck in the Middle with You. I cannot listen to that song without thinking of the scene of Mr. Blonde with Officer Nash in that chair. With that, hey Jedi Ben, good to see you, man. Appreciate it. So again, this is the one where like the director, Quentin Tarantino, really wanted to craft it, and he did the same thing with Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction was in that same style, and it was another great, another great soundtrack. But this was kind of like again, this was the introduction to Tarantino, and so that's why this is always a soundtrack. And this is one I probably pull up more songs from this soundtrack to listen to than I do Pulp Fiction. That's how good it is for me, and it was great. And this is one I didn't see in the theater either. This is one that I had to see it on video with that. So plowing on through, what do I have up here next? So technically, this one is not a soundtrack, even though I think they put a couple of songs. Thanks for being here, Chad. I appreciate it. So this is one again. This was not a soundtrack to Young Guns 2. Even though they did, I think they did do a couple songs. This was Bon Jovi, and this was him doing as John Bon Jovi, and not as part of Bon Jovi. If that makes any sense, he didn't include his band. This was him doing it all the way. But he did it. But it matches the movie because I guess he'd seen the movie or he'd been. I know he had a cameo in the movie, Young Guns. And Young Guns 2 is it was one that I really kind of liked. This one a little bit more than the first one, if you can believe that. But this is one that's and plus what was cool about this one is that John Bon Jovi was known at that time, for the big hair pop rock. Type. They weren't heavy metal. Bon Jovi was never hard. It was kind of like that, that whole hair band phase. But he kind of crafted these songs that were a little bit Western, but still kind of retained his signature style. And then this is also one too that used snippets of dialogue through it. There were just some really good songs in this one that he did, and this is kind of like the last of that era of when one singer or band did an entire soundtrack for a movie. That hadn't been done in quite a while. with that. But this is kind of one I was still, shot down in a blaze of glory, which is what they call blaze. It was is just amazing. It's a lot of it is ballad songs too, but this is one I'll pull up every once in a while and then do some of that. So moving on, and I am almost at the end of it. Gross Point Blank. This is a this is this is a this is a movie that if it's on TV or I'm flipping through it, I'll watch this thing wherever it's at in it. Um, whatever you think about John Cusack, he's kind of a far out there guy left on the left, but he's a good actor, and I loved him in this. So for if you haven't seen this one, no, that is a great movie, and what makes it great is the cast they had. You had John Cusack in there, um, and then Minnie Driver was in, and then Dan Aykroyd was in this movie. Um, yeah, who else? Yeah, it was gonna be. And for those of you who don't know, hadn't seen this one. Yeah, when I get back, yeah, the you know, chances are if I show up at your door, you've done something to Brady there. A lot of quotable lines in this movie. Sometimes I'll still do the Dan Aykroyd thing, pop, 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 popcorn, or this is me playing. I bet he did. I mean, I loved him in the in the Garden of Midnight, in the Garden of Midnight Garden of Good and Evil. That was a great movie. But the soundtrack to this one was great because the entire movie, he's a hitman and he's thinking about getting out, and he gets the invite to go back home to his high school reunion. So this was in I want to say around 95 or so. So this was the 10-year reunion. So the soundtrack is heavy 80s, but it's kind of like what can be considered alternative rock. It was that kind of a lot of the first wave stuff in there. So it had Violent Femmes' "Blister in the Sun" in there, which is a great song. I'm blanking on something. I didn't pull this one up, but a lot of great, solid songs for those. Uh, I guess it's true to say you can't go home. You can't go home again. No, this is a great movie. In fact, probably I'll go after this. I'll probably actually go back to my room and see if I can find it on streaming somewhere. And plus, this is one too. He had a sister. Um, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the sister's name. Um, Joan Cusack, who I've always enjoyed her. I mean, she's funny. Loved her in the Addams Family Values as Debbie, the villain of that movie. But she plays his secretary, who's got some great lines. Yeah, Joan Cusack, and he also snuck in his other sister that a lot of people don't know about, who's actually Ann Cusack. When he goes to when they go to the tiki bar, she's in there, and Anki, she did some television, a few other things. So he got his whole family a paycheck out of that, which is cool. But the songs were, and one of the most interesting songs on the soundtrack was one they didn't play in the movie. And so the opening soundtrack is the Violent Femmes' "Blister in the Sun." Um, oh yeah, absolutely, that was a great movie. She also played in a movie with Steve Martin and Rick Moranis called "My Blue Heaven." If you haven't seen that one, that's a great movie with that. But on the final track on this album is the Violent Femmes do a they do a cover of their own song "Blister in the Sun." And the Violent Femmes, if you know about them, they're it's a three-man group. You have Gordon Gano, who he plays an acoustic guitar. One guy, I can't remember the guy's name. He plays uh, like a bass guitar, and the other guy plays a snare drum, but uses the metal brushes on it, and that's all their band is. That's what all they're doing. But and they'll throw in accordion music and xylophone music, but the "Blister in the Sun" cover it's Gordon Gano singing it, but it's like a marching band doing the song. I think they call it Blister 2000 or something like that. So it was a very good one. Yeah, "My Blue Heaven" was great. See, man, it's so good to know people that actually have good taste in life. Yeah, and yeah, Vinny Witness, yeah, Witness Protection is great. But this is one too that I would just like. I would used to just throw this into the CD player in the car and just listen to the entire thing through with that. So that was a great movie. And I'm almost to the end here. Like I said, I've just kind of ripped through these real fast. But here's another one that and it's Old Brother, Where Art Thou? That it's a Coen Brothers movie. Great cast. George Clooney, George, or oh God, I can't think. Jim Turturro, um, John Goodman's in it. He plays it. Basically, this is probably uh, it's a movie that as I was watching, I didn't know when I first watched it because it was getting a lot of hype because the song, the big song at the time, "Man of Constant Sorrows," was a big hit from it. So by the time I got to watch it, I really didn't know much about it. But as I'm watching this, I began to realize that this was based on, and I think they may say that at the beginning, or they put a quote from the Odyssey in the beginning of it. But the entire movie is basically a telling of the Odyssey, set in the 30s, um, uh, Dust Bowl South area of that. So it follows all the beats of the Odyssey. But the soundtrack of this movie is what really sets it. Because in period pieces, I mean, you can get the all the costuming right and the sets right, and a lot of it because at the time they did this, like a lot of those buildings and towns that they were able to film in still existed. But what really sold it was the 1920s and 30s music style that they had in there. And what they did with a lot of those is kind of cause a revival in that type of music because the people that were there's a lot of people that were reperforming this. So it's like stuff the whole thing Big Rock Candy Mountain, which I'll find myself singing all the time. And you are my sun, you are my sunshine. And when I want to aggravate my wife, I'll start singing that to her just because I sing it really bad to her. Yeah, the Soggy Bottom Boys, and it's one of the things that was funny because it's like George Clooney didn't sing that song; he lip synced it, and they actually had a group of guys, but they got all these traditional music artists. Yeah, I think we're all that. I think that really resonated with us. That Constant Sorrow, and it's such a great song. Yeah, and but it also touched on some of the things that were going on in that time too. That kind of captured the essence of the good old boy network of the politics and all that stuff. Now they do that, but again, the Man of Constant Sorrow was like I think that actually won the Grammy. That song did with that, but then Keep on the Sunny Side, I'll Fly Away. Alison Krauss, who was a big country music star at the time, did that, and The Highways and the Hedges. And if you really want to hear a song that reaches into your soul, that song "Oh Death," it was the song in the scene of the movie is when they they infiltrate the Klan rally. And that's when they killed the John Goodman's character with the flag at the end. Which John Goodman, he was the Cyclops. But the guy that starts it where they're singing, you see this on "Old Death." But when you just like listen to that song, that is a song that really reaches into your soul because it's a song about a man trying to bargain with death to leave him alone, and death responding that let's not come for everybody when your time, and he's like offering him, fame, money, whatever he can just to have death come get him another day. Yeah, back when he actually had to get good songs to get a Grammy with that. And of course, the Man Con Sorrows. I mean, it was just uh, you know such a great soundtrack and to really set the tone. And this is one too that when my kids were younger, I would put this one on in the car, and they would just listen to it and just like they would sing along with these songs that they did in there. as we're looking, as we were looking at that. It was great. Now I'm coming up to my last pick, but I want to talk about something before I get to that one, because this is the one. This one will actually, you guys are going to judge me really hard for this one, because it's one of those things where we all have these guilty pleasure movies that you're really not proud of that you like, but you'll watch them. You don't talk about them as much. But before I get to that, um, that was, and this is something I've tried to tell folks, that this comes from an era like so when these things were crafted back when albums, like a band would get together into, and if Lou's still here, he could probably talk about this, where a band will sit there and say, hey, we've got to do 10, 12, or 15 tracks. And they just weren't all assembled all willy nilly. These were crafted for these albums, and they worked on them. Nowadays, the trend is that you just have to have one good song that gets traction on YouTube, and then you become famous. And so when they actually put out albums, it's like either everything all sounds the same, all the songs sound the same on the album, or it's just a mess. There's no coherence. But that's where soundtracks are the same way. Nowadays, it's kind of like most soundtracks are, like I said, that this is back also a time when people would get artists to actually create songs specifically for the soundtrack, and part of the things is a lot of times some of these songs, especially back in the MTV day, that would get a video. Um, that video and that song was kind of what almost sold the movie. Sometimes a lot of people went to the movie because they heard the song on the radio or watched it on MTV. And then sometimes you have like bands like I think of a good one. Uh, there's a song by the Red Hot Chili Peppers they did for the Coneheads soundtrack. That was almost a throwaway song, but that song became very popular, and they still play that day even though nobody likes the movie. But a lot of thought went into these soundtracks, and so like I said, so that's why, like, so when I listen to soundtracks, a lot of times they, the scenes from the movie that they're in are so stamped in my brain that I can see those uh, I visualize that, and there's some songs I can only associate with the soundtracks, and a lot of directors don't do that nowadays. It's like it's almost disposable that they'll just these license music because they feel like they have music. And I will say this, probably the best modern soundtrack, and this is my opinion, and you can hate me if you want on it, because I think that this is a guy that really cared what songs went into his movie, even though they kind of sometimes seem to remember was the James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxies. The 1, 2, and 3 all had great soundtracks. But that was all licensed, and we went and licensed those, and where he couldn't, he brought in a few covers where he couldn't. But when you look at those three movies, they definitely have a different. They're set in the period. Like the first one, it's all I think 60s and 70s because it takes place in the 80s. The beginning of it, I think, and then it moves on into the next decade, and the two one, and then the end there. So then I thought, so stalling right now because the next soundtrack, again, like I said, this is one of those guilty pleasure soundtracks. Um, I saw this movie actually, my wife and I saw this movie in the theater, um, and 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 to me, it's a good movie. It's fun. It's it's uh, it's aware of itself. The humor is not over. It's not. It's a movie I think came out in 2000, 2001. Uh, so it's a little bit before itself. It's got some self-referential humor in it, and it also has a kind of a message to it on there. But I mean, this guy, I'll just rip this band-aid off of it. Like I said, pretty much the five people I have in here will leave once I put this movie up. But to me, the soundtrack is very, very good. And that movie is Josie and the Pussycats. I think I heard a bunch of people scream and unsubscribe for me because of this. How could you? But listen, this was a good movie. It's based on an Archie Comics female group. This was right at the time where I guess the whole girl power bands were really taking off. Like the Spice Girls and a few others. But this movie kind of poked fun at it. It had Rachel Lee Cook um, in it, Tara Reid before she was officially great. Yeah, and the cartoon. Yeah, Jeremy, and the cartoon. But they didn't get a space into it. You can tell that whoever did this movie liked the characters and didn't hate them because they included uh, it wasn't awful, but I thought it was good. And this one too, that when my boys were little, they liked it. I think it's probably because a lot of bright colors and random action in it, type of deal. But and of course, this was a movie about a band. There was a lot of singing in it, so the soundtrack are all the songs from the movie. And what is great is as you listen to the song, I kept saying to myself that the performer sounded familiar to me, but on the soundtrack it didn't list who the performer was. It credited all the songs as to Josie and the Pussycats. Oh, and another thing too, the other good thing about this movie too is it had Parker Posey at the end of her Queen of the Indies era, who to me she is funny. Um, so, but for all three of them, Halcyon, or for anyone in particular, because this is like I said, because that Rachel Lee Cook, who's great, Tara Reid before she completely lost her mind, and early, I think this is like Rosario Dawson's second film, I think that she's in before she got to begin to think that she's more than what she is, type of deal. But going back to the singer, the singer, it's one of the things is like but these are like really catchy songs, great songs. And then it came out a few years later that Parker, this I think she did Blade before this, and then this was before. So this is when Parker Posey. I think are you talking about oh gosh, Missy Pyle, who played I can't remember the name of the character playing, because there's a funny scene where he's on the plane and Alan Cummings' character asks, "Why are you even here?" And she's like, "Because I was in the cartoon." And he's like, "What?" She's like, "Hmm." Yeah, so it's kind of a self-referential thing. But it turned out that the singer of who did all the songs on the soundtrack was Kay Hamley from Letters to Cleo. And it's just great vocals in this one. And this is one too that we're watching. Yeah, Missy Pyle is great. She was she was also Missy Pyle was also in Dodgeball. She was the Russian the Russian dodgeball player they brought over to do that. So like I said, this is all one of those. Like I said, this is one of those films. It's one of those guilty pleasure films, ones that you'll put on the background list to. But to me, it had a great soundtrack because mainly, like I said, when you're doing a movie about a fictional band, you got to have the songs. And I think for all the songs out here that hit well, so with that, like I said, I wanted to do something a little bit different. Normally, I talk about action figures and stuff like that in movies. So I just kind of want to talk about, like I said, by all means, this is not an exhaustive list of my favorite soundtracks because there's a lot of things I forgot of. I mean, I would sit there and wake up in the middle of the night and say, I need to add this. And I cut a lot of them out because I wanted to keep it into a short list. And so with my stuff, mostly the bulk of my viewers come from replay. Mainly it's because I don't have a consistent time that I stream, or a consistent day, and I only do this once a month. And right now I'm trying to line up a guest for next month for August, which is tomorrow, but that's not when I'll do the show. So we do this. So I get a lot of people on replays, what I'm trying to say. So if you show up on replay and you watch some of this, let me know what are some of your favorite soundtracks or some of the songs for the soundtracks. Like I said, There's a lot of computer. I didn't put the Pulp Fiction soundtrack or the Crow 2 soundtrack, which is a great soundtrack. I'm sure I'm missing a whole lot of other um, soundtracks. Yeah, so Parker Posey was also in Laws of Attraction. She was a Brit punk rocker. Yeah, Michael Sheen's wife and does awesome. She was also in a movie called House of Yes that was disturbing. But I first saw her in Dazed and Confused. It was my first time I saw Parker Posey. And again, and that's another film that's got a great soundtrack because it's all, Dazed and Confused takes place in the 70s, and it's all 70s rock in that one. That's another great one. Um, I may have to do one of these on great movies. Yeah, a lot of firsts in that movie. Matthew McConaughey, a lot of guys are now in it, and plus that was a movie too. That the entire time I've been conditioned in the '90s. um, that was one of the few movies that I saw this. All through this, I'm waiting for like somebody to get hurt or to die, and they come to a grow up moment in it. That's because you just have like this teen movie set around a group of teens doing a coming of age story, and it was just about kids having a blast and a party on the last day of school and doing stuff with that. So it was, so like I said, this wasn't a comprehensive list because I kept thinking of different ones that would come up. Then I would like delete that, and there was someone say, "Oh, I got to write that one down," and I'd forget about it. But I do this, just kind of, when I like to share this stuff. I like people to know, and really you can tell a lot about, um, yeah, check you later, check you later. Yeah, that's a good one. um, was that Parker in Dazed and Confused responsible for at least three of my exes in my teens. Had to learn the hard way, fellas. But it was fun. Yeah, she was. Yeah, she was something that's still to this day. Um, uh, yeah, yeah. Parker Posey. I could probably do an entire Parker Posey retrospective uh, with that. But that was just like, again, because like I said, it came. All these came from a time in my life where I didn't have a lot of the responsibilities that I have now. Um, and a lot of good memories about going to folks with the theaters. My kids do that now. Um, I'll say, "Hey, where are you going?" And say, "Hey, we're going to go see this movie." I think one of my sons, I was talking to him today, he went and saw Spider Man. I got another one that's going to go see it tomorrow night. And it's just, I just don't get to go to movies as much anymore. I said, folks, the last, I actually went and saw the Motu movie in the theater. And that was the first one I'd seen in the theater in, I want to say John Wick 2. It was like probably the last movie I went and saw in the theater. To see before that, so it's like years it took me to get in the theater because you got to go through, and it's just a hassle, and it's just me. But there's a time where that's what I would do. I mean, basically every day of the week I used to be in a movie theater and watch stuff. And then if we didn't have that, we're at the video place renting all the movies and watching stuff. It's such a big, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I have such a bunch of useless knowledge in my brain. Yeah, and going back, I love when they hit Princes of the Universe. You know, I, I know that Highlander is one of those movies you either love it or hate it type of deal. That was great, and Motu was a good movie. I think the people that are hating on it are the hardcore fans that really thought this should be a Conan meets Excalibur type of movie. They were wanting a more serious movie, completely forgetting that the original source material, which is a cartoon, was really silly. With that. So, but that's it. Like I said, I know we got about 5 minutes left of the show. There's other things going on tonight. I don't know who I'm going to go watch after this. I watched some Chad in his mandatory fun earlier today. I think I'll probably watch a little Mikey and Canon, pop over to Plastic Journey for a little bit, just surf around, or I may go just back to my bedroom and look at see if either Gross Point Blank or Josie is on streaming somewhere. Yeah, Flash Gordon. Yeah, that was that was, but yeah, movies were a lot different back in the day. They were yeah, it was just a great thing. Yeah, I love the movie Flash Gordon as a kid. Um, so but well, I thank you guys for hanging out with me for a little bit and watching this. No, that's okay. I'm used to it. Um, that, like I said, here's the thing about my channel, and this is one of these things. I'm not one of these folks that thinks he's going to get rich doing it. I want people to watch my channel uh, because I'm talking about something that resonates with them. When I have a guest on, that's why I pick guests who I want to talk to and get to know more as people outside of the chat with that. So I really just do this for me. I joke that I will not monetize this channel until I hit the bare YouTube minimum to do it, and that's a long way off with that. I'll just check right now. So I'm just rambling and trying to kill some time in the last few minutes. So let me go look at the old YouTube. Nope, that's Instagram. So looking at my channel, I have 191 subscribers, which I thought I would never do that. I only, let me see, what's my analytics for earning stuff? So have 191 subscribers and need a minimum of 500. But I only have 146 qualified watch hours, which they tell me you need 3,000, and shorts are just 1,000. But shorts always do better anyway for some reason, because it gets dumped into everybody's social media, so people just will watch it. And you need 3 million short views to do that. So yeah, this is never going to be a big one, which is why also too I feel like I get away with stuff that a lot of channels don't. If you ever watch any of my I may be wrong or I may be right videos, because the way the cancel folks are, they only attack channels that have large subscriber bases or are monetized, because that's how you get the clout. So taking on me doesn't get you anything with that. So nobody bothers me. But I do appreciate everybody that watches. Also, Trevor, thank you, Hendo. We had a great. You want to go watch? This year I interviewed Hendo. I had a great time doing that. Just two guys talking. Yeah, YouTube's pushing shorts because they're trying to chase TikTok, and plus people don't have a lot of they don't have the attention span anymore. And I know this even on the few videos that I've done. I'll get comments. I can tell people didn't watch either the whole video or just watch part, very small part of it, and just rush to the comments to make a comment. Didn't even watch the thing as well. And I'm not one of these guys too that is going to pay do a lot of controversial videos. A lot of seems right now the new thing in videos is to you have people that make all of their views off of complaining about stuff, and then that's created a subcategory of people that make all their views off of complaining about the complainers type of deal. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to talk about stuff I want to talk about, the things I don't talk about, and if 1 or 5 or 6 people watch it, that's fine. But I do appreciate everybody that shows up for these. Maybe next year. I've only got 3 episodes left for this year. I stopped. This is my second year doing this, and I made a decision to not do lives past October, because November, December is just so busy, and trying to get a guest is really hard to do during that time as well. So I just don't I just take a break and I like reformat, think I'm going to do it again. I changed up the format for this year. Last year, every episode was a guest episode. And now I'll do every other episode as a guest episode with that. So we'll see if I'll do a third year of this. But again, appreciate everybody being here. So I do one of the things I do. I is I always like to leave everybody with a final thought, or I say something to think about, and usually it's something silly. So, one of the things that sometimes we have a hard time doing is letting go of things that we love. That's why we tend to hold on to a lot of these things that we keep. You see all this stuff behind me is a good example. And I heard a wise man say one time that if you love something, set it free. If it comes back, it's yours. If it doesn't, you should go out, hunt it down, kill it for betraying you. So think about that as we leave tonight. And so with that, I'm going to end my live stream the way I end all my live streams, by pushing a button. So good night. Hopefully I'll see you guys next month, or I'll see you as I'm hanging around in the chats of other channels. So go watch something cool and have a great night and a good weekend. See you next month.